Welcome to Storytime with Writers Playground. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Mariana Davila,
And I am Eric Humbert.
and we are your hosts. We had a really fun story to share with you today. I think we could classify it as a fable, so that it's not a genre that we selected very often.
It's got charm and style to it.
I think we're pretty much just going to get right into it, no?
Yeah, there hasn't been too much going on with us. We've just been working hard on your submissions. We sent out our first status update last week, and basically it just said that we're still on pace to announce the winning stories around mid-October, and we will send out one more status update next month, and in that we will set the specific date for when we'll announce the winners.
We are looking forward to that. We are really enjoying these stories.
Definitely. All right, let's get to it.
Sounds good. Today we will be reading a story called No Such Thing as Serendipity by Davies, which won 10th place out of 553 submissions in our 1-year anniversary challenge. So that was our 4th playground challenge. And it is a fun fantasy that takes place in the faraway land of flowers, in a faraway time long past, where Gumbill Fig prepares himself for the trial of wisdom.
And Dan Davies is a talented writer from Armidale in New South Wales, Australia. He was the winner of the 2022 New England Thunderbolt Prize for the Crime Writing Emerging Author Award. He was a finalist for the Newcastle Short Story Awards anthology and shortlisted for the E.M. Fletcher Writing Competition. And he currently has a fantasy novel in the works, so keep your eyes peeled for that.
You can also find his website in the description wherever you are listening to this, so make sure to check that out. But for now, here is No Such Thing as Serendipity.
No Such Thing as Serendipity by Dan Davies. In the faraway land of Flars, in a faraway time long past, Gumbill Fig prepared himself for the trial of wisdom. He would be the 7th and final candidate to be asked a question at this year's convocation. Akashi always asked the same question. It was well known to be, "What's life?" Gumbill tried to focus, but he knew he shouldn't be there. If his uncle hadn't disappeared, if his auntie hadn't caught the fever, if his older brother didn't have a boil in his ear, then one of them could have come instead. Gumbill knew he was here by default, but here he was, representing his clan, the chosen sacred leader of the Fellowin faction. No pressure. Way back, over 200 years ago, before Akashi came, the people of Flars were generally united by their superstition and doubt. They invoked many different deities or spirits in hopes of a blessing or two. Crude magic, faith, philosophy, and science were bound together in an emerging discourse of, what's it all about? Historically, a council of elders had led society by a simple set of guidelines that encouraged freedom of thought and expression, though some limits were placed on expression. All in all, it was a very thoughtful, expressive society that shared its knowledge and resources in relative harmony. Then Akashi appeared. Akashi quickly became known by the people as the Great Library, the source of all knowledge and wisdom. Many people came to ask questions, most often the same questions, time over and over time. As it unfolded, some people began asking the wrong questions. The Great Library housed no literature and was no building or individual, but an artifact. It merely appeared one day, its origins unknown, origins it would not discuss. At first, everyone had access to the Great Library, and new laws were spontaneously founded upon its teachings, which were as follows. What is good for the land must come first. If you have plenty, you must share. Do not take what is not yours. For a few short years, people prospered with the guidance from Akashi, but it didn't take long for the cracks to appear that would eventually tear the council apart. Akashi took the form of the carved face of a black owl, a visage of dense, polished ebony, or so it seemed. It spoke to those who pressed their face into its cavity. It was said to be of alien origin, for nothing like it existed, and none could move it from where it had appeared, hovering in the middle of a huge stone circle atop Mount Severus. Untouched by the weather of 2 centuries and more, unable to be burnt or cut, it sat in the air a few feet off the ground, as still as the stones that surrounded it. Its magic had the ability to transfer knowledge directly to the mind of those who would inquire of it. The only difficulty lay in knowing what to ask. Sometimes Akashi's answers were obscure and ambiguous, sometimes simple. Often the answer to a question would lead directly to a dozen more. Occasionally an answer would become a point of great contention or curiosity, giving rise to volumes of anatomization. Questions range from requests for remedies to relieve pustules to inquiries into the nature of gods. One famous question went like this: how will I be remembered? Akashi's words emerged from the depths of the questioner's mind like the breaching of a whale. Best if you forget yourself now. A young Ludician girl once asked, "What is nature?" Akashi's reply instantaneous: "Nature is the law. Obey the law, lest you be ruled by tyrants." A renowned philosopher once asked, "What is faith?" Akashi's response: "Believing what you can't see, until you see what you believe." The great library sealed itself in its 6th year, but no one knew exactly why. Of course, everyone assumed it had something to do with the dissolution of the Elder Council, and each of its members blamed another. As the intolerance had grown, Akashi had become less accessible and began to withdraw, choosing to engage with fewer and fewer individuals. The Council's fundamental differences of orientation became irreconcilable. Based on information from Akashi, often misinterpreted, the once stable nation divided into atheistically and theosophically oriented denominations. Rather than adopting an interdisciplinary approach, as Akashi had suggested, friction caused fractures and factions formed. The schisms saw the emergence of 7 distinct groups that quickly forgot their similarities, becoming rigorously focused on their differences. Many strove to distinguish themselves, guarding their knowledge and discoveries like secret hoards of dragons old. The great library remained in place, but would answer no more questions. It now had a question of its own, a question it would ask elected representatives but once a year. If the question were answered satisfactorily, Akashi had let it be known that full access would be restored. This became the one tradition uniformly observed by all factions, known as the Convocation, or the Trial of Wisdom. Every year, the 7 factions would send their best candidate to the Convocation to attempt to answer Akashi's question. The question had not changed in over 200 years. The question had been heard many times by many candidates, but had never been answered satisfactorily, despite the fact it was multiple choice. Each year, Akashi asked the exact same question of the candidates. It was the choice of answers that constantly changed. In 222 years, no one had yet chosen the correct answer. Faction members elected their candidates by popular vote, ensuring an even mix of the orders, which were as follows: the Dingmir, esoteric philosophers; the Feloin, anarchic hedonists; the Preksha, mystical occultists; the Mandakat, metaphysical scientists; the Ongords, non-binary spiritualists; the Sniffid, conservative pragmatists; the Ludician, secular animists. Most of those attending the convocation were spectators. The Trial of Wisdom was for the chosen 7 only. Some were practicing wizards, priests, and sages, their skills steeped in deep traditions of ancient arts. Gumbel's ancestors were the Bumwa, a branch of the Druidic tree absorbed by the Feloin faction. They espoused nature as a sacred entity and saw themselves as its children. They lived in the forests of Pugway and were widely considered backward and resistant to structure, rules, and regulations. Gumbel Fig was little more than a simple gardener, who occasionally had odd dreams and was recently appointed spiritual delegate. The other 6 candidates treated Gumbel as scholars do simpletons, either with condescension or indifference. He had a look of wide-eyed apprehension that marked him as one out of their element, which indeed he was. Barely past his teens, he'd never been anywhere or done anything important. The rush to find replacements for his faction's representative had been chaotic, consensus hard to come by. Gumbel's family had provided Feloin candidates for as long as anyone could remember, but none could remember why. In the end, it came down to a choice between Gumbel and his cousin, a Felony. A Felony had 12 webbed toes, which meant she'd been blessed by the water spirits. But Gumbel had had several prophetic dreams over the years, and on this basis, he narrowly edged out a Felony to find himself the Feloin Convocation candidate. standing atop Mount Severus at the 222nd trial of wisdom. As it transpired, Gumbel had experienced a peculiar dream the night before the trial. All night he was visited by intense visions of owls. Some of them clawed at his eyes and ears, and others pecked at his lips. Some just stood and stared at him with steel moon-like eyes. One, an archetypal owl, spoke to him. It said, "Hoot, hoot!" and it kept hooting at him until he felt he could vaguely understand it. Its hoots began sounding like words, not to his ear, but in his mind. The owl said, in its hooty voice, "All love the above. All love the above." Gumbel woke agitated, only half recalling his fractured dream, dreading the task at hand. He felt somewhat encouraged by the fact that the great library's question had been asked over 1,500 times before, and no one had got it right yet. The Ungordian representative from Cathar, where the curly-horned, red-eyed priests practiced blood magic by sacrificing virgin goats, brushed by Gumbel in a huff. She was the 6th candidate to have failed the trial of wisdom this year. Some of the crowd began to dissipate, confident of Gumbel's imminent failure. The reticent fellow candidate approached Akashi, and time seemed to slow as he sat on the purposefully placed and aptly named sitting stone. He leant forward and pressed his face into the hollow behind the legendary black alien owl. The last sounds he heard were the sneers and heckles from the crowd as they cruelly pointed out his obvious inadequacies. Immediately he felt a vastly empty presence accompanied by a deafening silence. Then his body evaporated, and his consciousness floated as if suspended by thin fluid. As we know, the voice of Akashi was not audible, but came as fully formed thought, bypassing time, arriving within the mind as though it instantly grew there, from seed to vine in no time. "What's life, Gumbel?" Gumbel's essence floated like a warm snowflake as Akashi supplied 4 possible answers for him to choose from. This was instantaneous, as though it had already happened. The choices were: 1. The paradox of duality represented by ontological entropy with/in the constant of change. 2. The omniverse getting to know itself. 3. An act of being. 4. Expression beyond expression. Thoughts rushed to flood Gumbel's consciousness, like a whirlpool of oceanic energy spiraling toward some central concept obscured by a churning mass of spinning notions, the center too dark and dense to penetrate. All was confusion and chaos, color, sound, motion. Then he saw the owl, flying in smooth circles counter to the spiral of tumbling thoughts. He tried not to panic. He tried to focus on the 4 possible answers. Gumbel remembered hearing of similar answers to some of these. He knew that everything had been rejected in the past. Similarly, all but not one had not proven satisfactory, nor did chemical subjectivity bear fruit. Most of the answers the great library provided were of an esoteric nature, often tinged with scientific probability or spiritual potential. The 17th sage of the Mandakots, Blithen, had made his 43rd attempt this year. He was as bald as an egg, having torn out the last of his hair many convocations ago. He'd studiously continued to record all the answers Akashi offered, analyzing each in great depth, to no avail. The greatest minds were at a loss as to why no one had cracked it yet, even if only by luck. Many suspected the great library was somehow broken. Still, the question of what life is dominated modern science and spirituality, influenced the narratives of the popular cultures of the times. Again, Gumbel felt Akashi's words enter his field of perception, larger now, with potent force. What's life? Gumbel was deep in confused contemplation, still watching the whirlpool, wary of the owl. The owl looked at him, its eyes dispassionate orbs of golden light. It hooted once, and dove into the black center of the vortex of twisted conceptualization. "What's life?" boomed Akashi, with the volume of a snow-covered mountain. And again, the multiple-choice answers ran like a Mobius strip through Gumbel's scattered psyche. The hoot of the owl continued to echo within his essence, quivering like heat's haze. Suddenly, his dream of the previous night burst upon him like 1,000 facets of diamond lightning, and he found his mind expressing, almost blurting out, all love the above, all love the above, all love the above. The whirlpool slowed and faded. The deafening silence subsided. There was a long, still, timeless pause, as if the ocean had sighed. What did you say? All love the above? Well, the owl said it. Gumbel's mind sounded a little hesitant as it spoke. Another pause ensued, which seemed like all eternity compressed into one heartbeat, one endless instant moment. You saw the owl? Yes, I saw the owl. What did it say? All love the above. Akashi hummed with emotion, something akin to surprise, something not unlike wonder or amusement. Close enough. Those words, close enough, unfolded and radiated with the beauty of a fresh flower, and Gumbel was filled with an almost overwhelming sense of immediate connection, bound to an infinity of minuscule things whilst being wholly one thing, the everything, the only thing. Indescribable imaginings flew through Gumbel, and he through them. In mere moments, Akashi revealed things that should have taken years to tell. Observers of the convocation were still unaware anything unusual had occurred. Some were still mid-slur against Gumbel, who had only just sat down. After a few minutes, a far longer time than usual, those who'd remained at the convocation saw Gumbel stand, and it was plain for all to see. Something extraordinary had happened. The great library, Akashi, had vanished, and in its place was Gumbel Fig, glowing like polished silver, eyes wide and powerful, like an owl's, positively bristling with intrinsic potency and focused energy. Gumbel's ascendancy caused quite a stir. It wasn't long before the question arose. What was the correct answer? Gumbel now knew the correct answer had been all of the above, but Akashi had warned him not to bother trying to explain it, so Gumbel simply replied with a warm grin that the correct answer had been serendipity. Akashi also warned Gumbel not to answer too many questions in general, lest he become beset by those wishing to cure their infirmities and wretchedness, or worse still, those wanting to manipulate others for personal gain. Gumbel still enjoyed his gardening, but he took the time to nurture a new story for the people of Flars, one that encouraged them to embrace their differences and reunite. His first unchallenged act was to reinstate the 3 laws Akashi had originally helped to develop, stating that they were perfectly good for a start. He then facilitated the development of a new mythology for the continually curious and doubtful people of Flars to follow if they chose to. For those people, Gumbel provided an allegory that Akashi had recommended due to its wide regional appeal. It went something like this. The sun is the father of all. There is no life without his light. His fury is great, revere him. The earth is the mother of us. There is no life without her fertility. Her love is great, worship her. The sacred seed of the soul is transmitted through light. Water is the receptor. The ocean is the womb. The soul manifests itself through matter. All matters to life. Gumbel could have gone further, but there are things people can only find for themselves. Life is a journey of discovery. It's like an endless game of hide and seek. When consciousness manifests as matter, it forgets itself, like how your shadow is absorbed when you move out of the sunlight, temporarily lost. Like plunging into a pool, suddenly the air outside you is gone, and there is only the air inside you. Like dreaming. Like a butterfly doesn't know there's a caterpillar inside it. Like chickens aren't sure if they came first. Like we once lived in water, blind in the dark, nameless, wordless, careless, inseparable. Life is a gift, full of surprises, full of the unknown, full of discovery, an experiential game of chance. It is all these things and much, much more. What it is not, what it is never, what it continually refuses to be, is an accident. Of that, there is no chance.
That was No Such Thing as Serendipity by Dan Davies. And I just think that it is such a fun and thought-provoking story.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one.
Alright, well, let's start at the beginning. Or actually, let's start with the title. Or more specifically, serendipity.
Cool.
Well, according to Merriam-Webster, serendipity is the ability to find valuable or agreeable things not sought for, or luck that takes the form of such finding. So basically, it is stumbling upon something good by chance, or finding something valuable that you haven't been consciously looking for. And so in the story, Gumbill tells the others that the answer to the question, what is life, is serendipity.
Interesting. Yeah, let's consider that for a moment.
So, life is something agreeable that wasn't sought after, right?
Yeah, and life is something that we stumble into by chance. We don't choose to be born, but life itself is such a gift. And then the final lines of the story are saying that life is not an accident. It is a gift, full of surprises, full of the unknown, full of discovery, an experiential game of chance, but it is not an accident. That's what the ending says. But what do you make the title from that? There's no such thing as serendipity.
That's a good question. It is definitely open to interpretation and it is thought provoking. Gumbill says that life is serendipity, but the title is No Such Thing as Serendipity.
Yeah, or maybe Gumbel is not saying that life is serendipity. Maybe he is saying that the answer to the question was serendipity, as in he stumbled upon the answer by chance. It just came to him in the dream, like we saw.
Okay, but according to the title, there is no such thing.
True, but perhaps Gumbel is just wrong, and that's just what he told the others. Perhaps it wasn't an accident or just random luck. Maybe the story is suggesting that it was fate or that everything happens for a reason.
Maybe.
The idea in itself, the idea that there is no such thing as serendipity, maybe it's not meant to be taken quite so literally. Maybe it's just suggesting that choices matter, actions matter. Maybe it's stressing the significance of free will, the idea of karma.
Do you believe in fate and karma?
No, I don't believe in fate because, like I was just saying, I do believe in free will, and I believe that choices and actions really matter. I think that is really what defines a person's character. When we often give the advice as writers and our feedback, what makes for interesting characters in a story are the choices that they make and the actions that they take, especially when faced with difficult choices and situations. You don't want to write a passive character with things just happening to them and them, not really doing anything. But what about you? Do you believe in fate? Do you believe that things are meant to be and that everything happens for a reason?
No. I definitely don't believe that everything happens for a reason. I think there are too many terrible things that happen to innocent people. Same reason I don't believe in karma. Too many bad things happen to good people, to children, and vice versa. I think there are people that have done terrible things, that have gotten away with it, and have prospered.
I don't know. I mean, that's true. But I do believe in karma. I think if you treat people well, if you have a positive attitude, good manners, if you spread kindness, and just if you do the right thing, even when people aren't looking, I think that does really come back to you. Even insofar as that'll make you feel good about yourself and the person that you are. That is something that can't be taken from you. Like you're right. Bad things happen to innocent people, so it's not like an absolute. But I still believe in it. I think it works in the opposite as well. If you're not a good person, if you don't treat people well, I think there's a sort of soul rot, and that leads to just a miserable existence. I do think it comes back to you one way or another eventually.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I would like to think that for sure, but I don't know.
All right. Well, anyways, let's get back to the story.
Yeah, like I said, I thought that this was such a fun fable. Dan does a great job setting up the premise as we learn about this land of flowers, about the trial of wisdom, the main question, what is life, the great library, the different factions that are formed, and the writing is just great. There is a really nice rhythm and flow to it. There is a poetic quality. There are some parts that had a little bit of rhyme. There is a little bit of alliteration that he uses, but not too much of these things. Because it is really easy to make rhyme and alliteration feel forced and cheesy, even gimmicky. But in this piece, he used it sparsely, so it really worked and adds some fun flair to it.
And that really goes along with the genre, with the story being like a fantasy fable, with this really nice message about how life is a gift. It's a very uplifting piece, and I love how Gumball is the underdog, how we read that he was a simple gardener, and we read the other 6 candidates treated Gumball as scholars do simpletons, either with condescension or indifference, yet he's the one who's able to get it. It's sort of saying, don't underestimate people.
I think there are a lot of great messages, one of which is that it kind of explores the idea that we are all connected and that everything is connected and just parts of a whole, that nature is everything. The scene itself in which he's going through the trial is really compelling, and the description that we get afterwards is great.
Yeah, and I love the allegory that we get in the end, how the sun is the father, the earth is the mother, and so forth. I thought that was great. And the ending just makes you feel good. It's life-affirming and just really enjoyable. Anything you want to add?
I think that is about it. For the prompts, Dan chose a religious or spiritual leader for the character. He chose a convention for the setting, and the one thing that everyone had to include in this challenge was a wooden mask. And in this piece, we read, Akashi took the form of the carved face of a black owl, a visage of dense polished ebony. So that is a wooden mask right there.
Yep. Make sure to check out Dan's website, which, again, you can find in the description wherever you're listening to this. And thanks so much for joining us.
We will be back for another episode in 2 weeks.
Have a great one, everyone.
See ya!
Bye-bye.